Hello guys, it's Akoreanvlogger here again. Lately people have been telling me I have a Canadian accent. I didn't even realize that Canadian was an accent. So something mildly interesting about me is that I apparently have a Canadian accent, and when I speak Korean I have a southern dialect accent thing. When you typically think of Korean, you think of Seoul dialect Korean, and when you think of that, it's the standard, modern, formal, professional sounding Korean. But I speak a dialect that's from Gyeongsangnam-do, the southern Gyeongsang province. It's a different dialect, apparently cute now. It's apparently hip to speak in this dialect. It wasn't 5 years ago. I don't know why that is, but apparently it is. So there's that. Another mildly interesting thing about me is that I am obviously bilingual. Well, maybe not obviously because you've never really heard me speak Korean, but I am fully fluent in English and Korean. I also speak a little bit of Mandarin and a little bit of French. Well, not so much French. Because I was living in Canada, I was required to learn French in school. However, I quit French after 8th grade. French was too hard, and then I chose Mandarin, which was a harder language to learn, which wasn't a greatest idea. So I speak what Canadians call cereal box French. In Canada, there's two sides to every product. One's in English, the other one is in French. So I speak, that level of French. I can translate by looking back and forth. It's not even speaking French. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits when you're bilingual. You might have more job opportunities, you might be able to get along with more people, you have more access to resources, all that, yada yada yada. But there's also a lot of cons or some of things that are annoying about being bilingual as well. For example, pronunciation. Pronunciation, again, it goes back to the dialects thing that I said at the beginning of the video, and pronunciation is a big deal because, I know something in English that Koreans know in a Korean pronunciation, and when I say it in English, it makes me sound pretentious. But if I say it in Korean, then there's a chance that the Koreans themselves who speak English might not understand me. It's a very complicated thing. So words like straws, for example, Korean has adopted a lot of English words into their language recently, and the Korean word for straw is 빨대, but a lot of people are now calling it sturowu, which is the Korean pronunciation for straw. And if you are an English speaker, you don't understand what I'm asking for. Now, because this is a word that is adapted from English to Korean, so Koreans might not understand this either. It becomes really confusing. Like if you say something improperly, then it becomes really odd to people who know the correct pronunciation. For example, in English you refer to the capital of France as Paris. In Korean and French, however, you refer to the capital of France as Paris or Paris. That French people, I'm sorry for butchering your language. The main problem arises from the fact that some people might not know the two different variations of the words as they are said in their different pronunciations, and when people don't, it becomes really unclear what you mean, and as a result it becomes really hard to communicate with another person. Another thing that's really annoying about being bilingual is the loss of vocabulary in one language. Your train of thought is in one language, and then you're speaking a language. For example, I'm speaking English right now, and then suddenly I can't come up with the English word, so I have to revert back to Korean, and then it slips. I say Korean in the middle of an English sentence, and then the people around me that were listening to me in English would be like, wait, what? The more languages you speak, apparently the more prevalent this problem is. The more fluent you are in a language, the more prevalent this problem is as well. The more languages you speak, I imagine this will be more prevalent. This might not be because you have the loss of vocabulary in one language, but because it's easier to say or express something in another language. And then there comes a confusion of grammar, because when you speak multiple languages, they have different grammatical structures. So you might say things make sense in Chinese grammar, for example, which I sometimes do, and it's apparently not very pleasing to hear. And then another thing is people who are not fluent try to impress you with their fluency in a certain language, and you have to play along nicely because, you can't just say, oh, dude, suck, when some guy is like obviously trying very hard to speak English with a proper accent. And the accent thing, do I really have a Canadian accent? I know I say a lot because that's a force of habit. Is Canadian an actual accent? And then coming back on this topic of dialects again, if you have heavy accents or dialects, or if you know certain words in certain forms only, they assume that you speak funny because you don't have fluency in that language yet, which might or might not be totally true, but is annoying nonetheless. And especially if you don't have full fluency but you have an accent, then it becomes harder to communicate than it should be. On top of that, there's also a train of thought. When you learn another language, you sometimes think in that language. For example, I am thinking in English right now, and sometimes I revert back to thinking in Korean, and sometimes even in Mandarin. By the way, my Mandarin skills are somewhere up there. I speak enough Mandarin to hold a decent conversation, and then you start thinking in one of those languages. So those are some of the things about being bilingual or trilingual or multilingual that you might not have been aware of, and yeah, that's it for today. I'll see you guys next time.